Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'da, habita fillah. Continue on in our brief overview, and perhaps we could call it a study of our sheikh's advice to the youth of Ahl Sunnah. We left off in the 7th point. Wa alaikum salam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The 7th point with regards to hajr, boycotting one another, boycotting individuals due to their sins, due to their innovation. So the Sheikh mentions in the 7th point, he says, rebuke and refutation of the one in opposition is to be considered advice for and preservation of the ummah for falling into his mistake. This is from the well-known and established principles of Ahl Sunnah and considered to be one of the greatest forms of jihad. But it is imperative to carefully consider the guidelines and conditions by which one can achieve his goal, and from amongst them. So meaning now he's going to give us some of the goals. Why are you boycotting? What is the whole purpose of this act of ibadah, which is mashru', which can seem like it is something which is causing discord between the Muslims, but in fact it's supposed to be a means of rectification. And as Shaykh al-Islam Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned, as we mentioned yesterday, that, this hajr, these things are a type of medicine. They are there to be as a type of medicine to cure bid'ah, cure the threat that these things cause our community. So he says, from amongst them, firstly, the individual has to be sincere to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and sincerity in his intention to aid the truth and absolutely restrict himself to this. Some of the requisites of ikhlas are that you desire guidance for the one in opposition and for him to return to the truth. Secondly, that you take every path possible by which it is anticipated that his heart will draw closer to the truth without chasing him away. Thirdly, in addition to these two, you should supplicate to Allah sincerely for his guidance, especially if he is from Ahl Sunnah or part of the general body of the Muslims. For indeed the Prophet ﷺ used to supplicate for the guidance of the kuffar. So how much more should this be emphasized with the muwahid from the Muslims? So it shows us, ahabati fillah, that we should be concerned with inviting one another to goodness, and that part of that these objectives in hajr is that you do want good legitimately for the person who is the mukhalif, the one who is making these sins, or the one who is making the bid'ah, that you want good for them, that you really want them to be guided back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not be a threat to the community. So this is a very excellent maqsad. It's a very good intention or objective that the Sheikh is mentioning, and it is often forgotten. And some of the people actually think that it's mumayya, that it's actually watered down, that you should want good for the people. Why isn't if the Prophet ﷺ wanted the disbelievers to be guided, and he called the mushrikun to Islam and Tawheed, why is it that we wouldn't call our brothers and sisters who are in the fold of Islam but who have sin or who have bid'ah, why wouldn't we call them? And that doesn't require any strange qiyas, but rather it's just a very simple analogy and a simple principle that you'll find in the Shar. He says, in addition, or he says, then secondly, so the second point under all of this, he said the refutation should be issued by a scholar whose foot is firmly embedded in the field of knowledge, and that he knows in detail all of the dynamics surrounding the issue at hand, which necessitated the refutation initially. This can only be achieved by knowing the legislated textual evidences and rulings of the scholars related to the infraction or opposition. He should know the extent of the misconception that the individual may hold which prompted him to embark upon this infraction, the refutations of the scholars concerning it, and how to benefit from them in the realm of refutation. So the point is that you should be a person of knowledge. Don't jump into the field of refuting people and debating and arguing with people, and especially if you aren't a person who has studied. And even more importantly, it's not just studying, but someone who has some knowledge. They have some ilm, and they have understanding of the principles of Islam, and even the principles of the mukhalifin, meaning those people who differ and those people who have disobedience and those people who are on bid'ah, that you should have an idea about their bid'ah. What is their mistake? What are they saying? Where did they go wrong? And what is the evidence? And why are they not, why do they need to be corrected? So these things, this takes fiqh fi din, and it takes ilm nafi'. And it's not for everyone. Not even everyone who has knowledge may or may not get involved in those issues, because either they may not have the heart for it, that they're not determined to speak about those matters and they feel shy, or they are not strong in that shakhsiyan, their personality is not strong for getting into debates and arguments or refuting Ahl Bid'ah, or perhaps they're not very good at articulating themselves, or articulating even the haqq, even if they know the haqq and even if they're on the haqq. So there are several things that come together and come to play when a person is involving themselves in these kind of issues. And one is the azima, that they have the determination to do it. Secondly is that they have the qudra that they're able to articulate, that they're able to deal with these kind of issues with strength, and the ability to articulate themselves. And also then, of course, the qudra of ilm itself, that they have the knowledge. So that's why it's not for everyone, and it's unfortunate that so many of the youth have gotten involved in these things. And that is one of the reasons why the Sheikh wrote this treatise, in order to invite the youth back to the sabil al-rushd, back to the path of correctness, the path of guidance, to not be involved in every issue and every kind of controversy and every kind of confusion and every kind of controversy between people in the community, but rather focus on raising yourself and learning your deen in general, and not being misled by others who want you to steep yourself in controversy. Likewise, it is appropriate that the one in opposition to be refuted with weighty evidences in order to establish the truth and remove any doubt about the matter. So that takes knowledge on the part of the person who's refuting, that they have to have ilm, and they have to be able to convince, to try to be able to present that knowledge, not just that they know, and they may have book smarts, if you will, or they've perused the text and they know a lot of the usul and so forth, but they may not be able to articulate that. They may not be good in hifz to where they can really come off on cap, as we say, from their head, to be able to bring the proofs and the evidences. And that's why everyone should not get involved in these kind of issues. He says this is done by using terms that are clear and precise, in order that the intent of the one refuting does not become misconstrued or misunderstood, or to leave room for the one in opposition to feel as though it was not convincing enough, such that he may misunderstand the objective. If this is not done, it will result in tremendous damage, like confrontation and resistance towards the one who neglected these prerequisites before embarking upon the refutation initially. So again, it takes knowledge, because if you're not convincing, if you don't have the knowledge, if you don't have the ability, again, you can cause more harm than good. Thirdly, one should carefully consider while refuting the one in opposition that people vary in their levels of opposition, vary in their levels in the religion, and vary in their worldly status. The motive for opposition essentially differs from one individual to the next. It could be the result of jahl. The person could be ignorant. It could be hawa, following his desires, or just absolute innovation, bid'ah, or due to the fact that he is inarticulate and doesn't know how to express himself, or it was just a mere slip of the tongue. So there's various reasons why people make mistakes, and why people fall into bid'ah, and why people have mukhalafat like this. There's various reasons for this. And so that's why it's important for the faqih, for the one who has knowledge and understanding of these principles, that they have to actually analyze these things. It's not a simple thing that you just make hajar of people and you cut people off. These are Muslims. So there should be a Sharia objective, and you have to know the various conditions and qiyud and limitations and restrictions and asbab and ways of guidance. You need knowledge. You need to be able to understand and realize. And why is the person deviating? Is it because they're ignorant? Is it because they're just a pure mubtadi'ah? Is it because they made a mistake? Is it because they're following their desires? What are the reasons behind that? And that's going to change your approach. That should have an effect on how you approach this individual. And the one who makes a mistake, makes a slip of the tongue, is not like the one whose usul is from Ahl Bid'ah. And the one whose usul is from Ahl Bid'ah is not like the one who made a mistake in one issue, even if it was due to his desires. They're not exactly the same. You can't just put everything in one block. That you do have to understand that and look at these masail. You have to look at these masail. It could also be the case that he is affected, meaning the mubtadi'ah, or the one who's made the mukhalafat, by his sheikh, or the environment in which he was raised. The way he interpreted his intent, or other than this, from the many reasons which led to legislative infractions or opposition to the Quran and the Sunnah and the methodology of the Salaf. Whoever neglects taking these things into consideration and fails to not acknowledge their variations and differences when refuting, then perhaps he may fall into either excessiveness or transgression of the boundaries, or just total negligence of the matter altogether, which would prevent the one being boycotted from taking full advantage of his admonition and diminish the benefits found therein. Fourthly, one should carefully consider while refuting the one in opposition that achieving the legislative objectives and benefits of refutation is the ultimate goal. So what's your ultimate goal? Is you want to rectify something. You want something to be better. You want to correct this individual, or you want to protect the community from his harm, or you want to protect yourself from his harm. There should be some Sharia-based objective. For neglecting this will result in greater harm towards the one being refuted, at which point refutation is not admissible nor recommended. In the religion of Islam, you don't combat harm with one that is greater than it. As Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah said, it is not permissible to repel a minor evil with one that is greater than it, nor to repel the lesser of the two evils by embarking upon the greater of the two. For indeed, the legislation of Islam came to secure and perfect these benefits for the ummah, in addition to repelling and reducing the evil as much as possible. So the recommended thing is to give precedence to the better of the two goods, if it is not possible to achieve both of them, and to repel the worst of the two evils, if it is not possible to rid ourselves of them altogether. So we're always looking at what is going to be, if there's evil to be embarked on, if you will. The Sharia encourages us, and as a Sharia-based principle, is to take the lesser of the two evils. If you are in a situation where you don't have much of the option except to do something which may be something that has some harm or some negative to it, you are taking the less of it. You want to take the less of the two evils. For example, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah even mentions in his Majmu' Fatawa about some of the issues where the Tartars were, or the Mongols or whoever were drunk. They were in a drunken state. And some of the companions of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah said, hey, why don't you, Shaykh, why don't you command the good and forbid the evil? And tell them, they're drunk and that this is haram and this and that and the other. He said, while they are drunk, they're busying themselves basically with partying and doing their things, and they're not killing the Muslims. As soon as they become sober, they begin to strike the Muslims. So this is the less of the two evils, that if he had alerted them, perhaps they would have even killed him or whatever the case may be, because then they would focus their attention on that. And this is a very real issue that you even find. We find this in the streets all the time, that you see open munkar, but you don't have the ability to change that. And perhaps it's a lesser evil to not speak about it. And of course, it's a lesser form of iman than it is to engage and go right head first, and that it would cause a greater fasad for yourself or for the Muslims in general. And there are countless examples that we could probably come up with. So the Sharia encourages us to take the lesser of the evils. Then the Shaykh, he says, fifthly, what should also be emphasized here is that the refutation should be commensurate with the degree of propagation and prevalence of this particular infraction. If it has spread in a particular locality or community, it is not recommended to hasten with refutation, whether by way of written compilation or cassette tapes or any other means of propagation. This is especially true in a locality where people are not familiar with the fallacy or infraction being refuted. We talked about this yesterday, that if bid'ah is not known in that place, you shouldn't introduce it, even if you're trying to refute it. If it's not something prevalent in that community, it's not something that they even face or even aware of, why are you bringing it to their attention in their community? It's something they may not even have any need for knowing about, this confusion, knowing about this fitna. So for example, what might be a problem in Toronto is not going to be a problem maybe in Alaska. They might not have the same issues and the same dynamics in their communities. Likewise, what's going on in Alaska is not probably going to be something that we're going to deal with in Seattle or Seattle, Washington, or in Birmingham in the UK, or in Croydon, or in Brixton, or in Luton, or in wherever, that the Hull, England, that, the issues that each of those societies deal with and some of the threats of even bid'ah, even city to city, can be very different. What goes on in a small Muslim community, if there is one in Hull, England, which from what I know and understand, it's a fishing village more or less. And anyhow, there's probably very few Muslims there. So they are probably not going to be involved in the controversy that's going to be in Greater London. All the issues and the dynamics and the bid'ah that could be found there, and the discord between the communities and what's your position on this. No, they may not have any need for that. They may have a need for totally other issues that they're dealing with, that they're addressing, and they have no need for that, for someone in their community who's a student of knowledge to all of a sudden get involved in refutations that have nothing to do with what's going on in that mujtama, and then reading from the mimbar and speaking about these issues, confusing the youth and getting them involved in fitna that's 200 miles away, or fitna that is whatever, across the earth. So it's very important to have these kind of have a correct image of these issues and these concepts. He says, in this case, circulating the refutation in an indirect manner is more preferable, because if it is direct, people may possibly come across it, and the falsehood thereof is that's contained in it could be convincing, and it could remain in the people's heart. It could affect them. So leaving the people intact and free from hearing the falsehood to begin with is better than bringing it to their attention and then trying to refute it afterwards. The Salaf used to consider this point carefully in their refutations. In many of their books, which are specific to refutation, they use the truth to refute falsehood without even mentioning the falsehood initially, which is from their profound understanding of the religion and its objectives, whereas some of those who came after them have become very negligent in this. So you can see a difference between the Tariqat al-Salaf and the Tariqat al-Khalaf, that the Mutaqaddimin, the people who came before from the Salaf of this Ummah, they had immense fiqh. And they were closer, obviously, to the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And at the head of them was the Sahaba to Rasul ﷺ, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in. And with that being the case, they had a better profound understanding of the nusus, of the text, and how to deal with bid'ah. So sometimes, and if we want to follow the Tariqat al-Salaf, it may not be necessary to always mention particular individuals by name or even their bid'ah, but instead slap them with the truth, giving them that clear water and that giving them that clear, clean cup of haqq, of the truth, and allowing for them to partake in that, and this will help to keep that bid'ah from even coming to that community. It's by continually preaching the truth and teaching the truth and studying the truth. So sometimes that in and of itself is enough to deal with the issues of mukhalafat and widespread bid'ah, or from bid'ah even becoming widespread. Then the Sheikh mentioned, and this is very relevant for us, he says, how many laymen have been tested with hearing this, and as a result they begin to have doubts and suspicions about the fundamentals of the religion due to the fact that they read what was above their comprehension from the countless books of refutation, which none can enumerate except Allah. So it is incumbent upon those who hasten to spread these books amongst the lay persons to fear Allah and be cautious about being a source of fitna for the people in the religion of Allah. So that's a very important, powerful statement of the Shaykh, letting us know you want to be a source of rectification, not fitna. So if people are unaware of certain things that they don't really need to be, and that can cause them greater confusion, that can cause them to fall into bid'ah, that can cause them to leave the religion, that can cause them to become confused, that can cause them to embrace doubtfulness, then you don't want to be a part of that. You want to be a part of raising the people, rectifying their condition, helping them to be better believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and meeting Allah azza wa jal, based on the book and the Sunnah, not based on confusion and based on and learning about bid'ah that has no effect on them in their community. So you want to deal with the issues of that particular community and that particular mujtama. He says, the most startling thing I've heard in relation to this is what some of the students have resorted to in spreading these books of refutation amongst those who are new Muslims, those who have only been Muslim for a few days or a few months. The students encourage them to read these books of refutation. By Allah, what they are doing is appalling. So this is what the Sheikh had to say about this practice of, taking new Muslims and recruiting them to your hizb, to hizbiyah, or recruiting them to get involved in the controversy, recruiting them to just, we don't know what the maqsad is, but a lot of it just leads to dalal. That's why you have so many blind followers of so many different groups and sects and hizbs, because the people didn't educate them, didn't give them any tools, but they just gave them these kind of refutations and things to latch onto. Latch onto this, just know that our so-and-so is the one who's the leader of our group, and you need to listen to him. And whoever he's speaking about, you need to hate them. And, so these kind of, it almost becomes a spreading of an ideology. And that's why we have to be very cautious, especially with the new Muslims. They don't need to be involved in controversy, but rather they need the tarbiyah. They need to be raised up on the usul, al-i'tiqad Ahl Sunnah, on the foundation principles of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, not based on getting into controversy and gaining no knowledge. How many people are talking about takfir, and how many people are talking about tabdi', and they might not have ever studied a single book in Islam. And what's worse than that, as the Sheikh is mentioning, there are so many who might not even be able to read Surah Al-Fatiha properly, but yet they're talking about so-and-so's off the minhaj, and so-and-so is this, and so-and-so is that. And this is a very dangerous practice. And even Dr. Yasser Qadi, in his Muslim Matters, he points this point out. He makes a what do you call it? A startling criticism, or a burning criticism of some of the people, how they gave this the tarbiyah of supposedly the Salafi minhaj, is that they were teaching new shahadas, to get involved in major masail, and they don't even know how to make dua. They don't even know any supplications. They don't know any adhkar. They don't know any of the name of the Sahaba, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in. They don't know anything about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam even, but yet they know who's on it and who's off it, and they know amongst the Arabic scholars, even if they don't know Arabic, they know he's off it and he's the leader of the Hizbis. This is very dangerous. So it shows you how extreme it can get, that some of the people mislead people to such an extent and busy them with so many issues that have no relevance for them, and in fact it keeps them ignorant and dependent. It keeps them ignorant and dependent. One of the things that me and the brother, when he was in Medina, Shadid Muhammad, we used to discuss back in the day, he was discussing about the importance of when he was going to go back, that he wanted to teach people. He wanted to give them the tools. So we were both in agreement, the importance of giving the people the tools themselves so they can discern. And walillah alhamd, we see a lot of Talibat al-Ilm and a lot of Mashayikh that are graduates that are doing exactly that. That's what I noticed and observed from Sheikh Tahir Wyatt. I also noticed that from Sheikh Mufti Munir. And I noticed that from our Ikhwan in the Muslim Family Center. And I noticed that from so many of the Du'at al-Khair in the UK, that they're doing the same. They're trying to raise the people. We want to give you the tools so you're not dependent on us, and you're not dependent on a hizb, and you're not dependent on a group, and you're not dependent on blind following, but we want to give you those things to help you to be a better slave of Allah Azza wa Jal. So it's imperative, ahabati fillah, that we know this and we understand this, and that we're there to raise one another, not to discourage and confuse one another. I don't want you to follow me. That's not my goal, and that's not going to benefit me. It would only harm me. It'll make me more responsible, and it'll harm me, because then I'll be in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calling people to me instead of calling people to the book and the Sunnah, instead of calling people to proper education. So this is what we have to do. We have to be happy about the Du'at al-Khair that are out there trying to educate the people and not confuse the people. The Sheikh mentions a sixth point under this subchapter. He says, refutation of the one who fell into error or made a mistake is fard al-kifaya. Fard al-kifaya. This is important. Even before we go to what the Sheikh said, let's expound on this. This is knowledge that is fard al-kifaya. That means that not everyone is, as long as some people from the community, some scholars from Ahl Sunnah refute the people of innovation, or specific individuals from Ahl Bid'ah, or what have you, it is not necessary for every scholar to involve in that. And min bab al-awla, even more so, it is not necessary for the laypersons to all get involved and start speaking about people, even if they're people of innovation. Because anytime you speak about someone of Ahl Bid'ah or Ahl Sunnah, whatever, you have to be cautious of backbiting, and you have to be cautious of namim and ghiba, and all of those negative ways of speaking and sinfulness. Because there's always everything, as we talked about, everything it has to do with ibadah. That if you're speaking about a particular individual, it should be khalisan liwajillah. It should be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to gain his pleasure. How would that gain his pleasure? Because you're protecting his religion. So you're mentioning so-and-so, Dr. So-and-so, because Dr. So-and-so presents a threat to you in your aqeedah. Dr. So-and-so is spreading wickedness throughout the Muslim community. Dr. So-and-so is spreading secular ideologies in the Muslim community. Dr. So-and-so is doing this and doing that. So it should be based on a Sharia-based objective for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not to backbite someone, not to gain sin. I don't speak about individuals because I want to gain their sins and because I want to collect sins and I want my good deeds to be taken away. That's not why I do it. But you need to do it if it falls on you as a person of doing talib al-ilm, that it needs to be done lillah. And so again, it's very important to keep those objectives there. And as the Sheikh mentioned, it is fard al-kifaya. So it's enough if many tulab al-ilm have spoken about a certain individual. Tulab al-ilm min ahl sunnah. They've refuted so-and-so. Then it's not every student of knowledge doesn't have to get involved in that controversy. And first and more importantly, moreover, is not every layperson needs to even have any involvement in the fitna. He says, thus, if some of the scholars shoulder the responsibility of cautioning the ummah by way of refutation, by which the legislative objectives are achieved, then the rest of the scholars are relieved of this obligation and free of blame. This is because this is based upon widely recognized principles the scholars unanimously concur with, along with other communal obligations. So that these are issues, masail ilmiya. One of the most reprehensible and hideous mistakes that occur amongst the students of knowledge is that when a scholar refutes an individual who has made a mistake, or when a fatwa is issued by him warning against this individual or against a particular mistake, many students who ascribe to following the Sunnah and the scholars request from others to make bayan of their position concerning this refutation or fatwa. This is, look at how many of our du'at were taken off the minhaj because of this. Because groups of brothers would get together and say, what is your position? Make your bayan, and we want you to do it writing. We want it to see on YouTube. We want to see it out in the public. You need to make tawbah in public. You need to do this. And this is how they got them. This is how they lynched them. This is how they got them and were able to take them off the minhaj of Ahl Sunnah. What a dangerous practice. And the Sheikh was talking about this. And the very translator of this had this happen to him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rectify all of our conditions and affairs. Ameen. Rather, this has reached such a degree that they even require from the younger students of knowledge and even from the laymen to state and clarify their positions regarding this refutation and the one being refuted. Then they conclude, in light of this, their positions of al-wala wal-bara. Then they proceed to boycott one another based upon this. Shameful enough, some of the students may even boycott and abandon some of their own scholars. We've seen it. We witnessed it firsthand. Whom they have benefited from for many years in the field of Aqidah. Due to this fitna. This fitna has even made its way into the homes of the believers. To the extent that a man would even boycott his own brother. And a son would be disrespectful, rude, and shun his own parents. And perhaps a man may even divorce his own wife and separate himself from his own children due to this fitna. These are also real scenarios that have taken place over the years where people have said, oh, your husband is a hizbi, you must divorce. And issuing decrees of divorce and talaq, and breaking up homes. Wallah musta'an. When you look at the community, you will find them divided into two or more groups. every group making accusations against the other and obligating hajr on the other. And the ironic thing is that all of the above is found with those who ascribe to following the Sunnah. Those who, before the emergence of this differing, could not find anything derogatory to say about the other in relation to their aqidah or the soundness of their manhaj. This is either a result of extreme ignorance of the Sunnah and the principles that were established by Ahl Sunnah in the realm of reprimand and due to hawa, and we ask Allah for safety and preservation from this. So the Sheikh ended that portion of the treatise, and I don't want to just talk to myself, so we will wrap it up, but I just want to mention a comment about that. What we've seen in real time, how many scholars within let's just take a couple of years, how many were yesterday they were calling him Allama. Let's look at the case of Muhammad bin Hadi, Sheikh Muhammad bin Hadi. Okay, so many of the people who were big fans of him and used to build him up, yesterday, I've heard with my own eyes, one particular da'i, a big one in the UK, and he has a lot of ilm, may Allah bless him. But I remember him telling me once in Medina, and he was talking about Sheikh Muhammad bin Hadi, and he said, Wallah, he said, he's on the minhaj of the kibar ulama. He is going to be, in the future, he's for sure one of the kibar ulama. And I said, Alhamdulillah, because when I was in Medina, I didn't really sit with Sheikh Muhammad bin Hadi. I would go a little bit, and unfortunately, I found that he wasn't that consistent in his durus for me, so I didn't make that effort to go to his masjid and attend his durus like that. And so I remember this brother saying, and now his whole crew, when they were building him up yesterday, he was Allama in the West, and he was this, and he was right along with Sheikh Ubaid, and right along with Sheikh Rabi', and right along with Sheikh Muhammad bin Sheikh Bukhari, and others. And now they speak about him like nothing, and they call him bin Hadi. How is it that you call a scholar, somebody you were calling an Allama yesterday, and he's bin Hadi now? Who are you? You know, and that's not even taking a position that I support this or I support this. But the point is, why it's like this. To me, that shows an Adam. It shows a lack of those Sharia-based principles and that fiqh fi deen. That you would in one day, he's Allama Halabi, Allama Ali Halabi. Then next day, he's one of the Jordanians. Oh, you know the Jordanians. What is this? What kind of crazy talk is this? That to me, it makes zero sense, and it does not seem to have any substance from the book and the Sunnah and the madhab of the Salaf. That you would throw the ulama under the bus like this and speak about them. Even scholars that I disagree with, I still maintain respect with them. Especially scholars that have been known for the Sunnah. I might not love everything about them, and I disagree with some of the issues, and I think some of their issues they are mistaken in from the kalam from other ulama and from looking at the masail. But I will not go out there and just spend my time and effort speaking about ulama. I've voiced my differences in the past with Sheikh Yahya Hajuri. I still regard him as a sheikh, as someone of knowledge who should be respected, but we hope that he comes back from some of the issues that were there. I do believe there are issues, but I will not disrespect the sheikh and belittle him and say he's just a student of knowledge, or he's just Hajuri, or he's just this. I don't believe in that. And that doesn't show the respect that the scholars deserve, even if they even when they have mistaken or fall into mistakes or whatever the case may be. There is a level that you have to be careful of making tajawuz. And what we see is some people, they go so extreme. And this is one of the things Sheikh Ibrahim told us when we were learning his PhD thesis called Mawqif Ahl Sunnah min Ahl al-Bid'ah wal Ahwa. We studied the 2 volumes. And I remember him talking, and he was talking about a sheikh known as Fali al-Harbi. May Allah have mercy upon it, because he just died about a year ago. And or less. And there's a long story for those who don't know. and I'm not going to get into that. But what I remember, Sheikh Ibrahim did not speak about him directly, even though he was directly under the scope of Fali al-Harbi and other than them. They were attacking him. He was Mumayya. His thesis that we were studying, that this was Mumayya. It was throwing away the principles of Ahl Sunnah is what they were claiming, and all kind of other criticisms. But yet, the Sheikh two things. One, he never attacked them directly back. But one thing he said about the fitna when Sheikh Rabi, when they split, is that, because then we heard some things from Fali al-Harbi about Sheikh Rabi that he spoke some really bad things, said some really harsh things about Sheikh Rabi. Very disrespectful speech. When they were once like giving each other the blind pass, they grew up together. And they had years together, 40, 50 years, 60 years maybe together, and what have you. And so it broke down, and Sheikh Ibrahim said, one of the things you will find is that when people refute and they tajawaz al-had, they go beyond the bounds, it's impossible for them to come back. Meaning they have spoken so bad about the other person that it's impossible for that person to ever accept from them, or for them to ever come back. Because if you call somebody the son of a dog, if you call somebody, that his fatwa are like the farts of an old woman, this is what was said. This is well-known knowledge from some of the scholars, how bad it got. His fatwa and his kalam is like the fart of an old woman. How does a scholar say that? So when you get that much animosity and you've said statements like that, how do you come back? No matter how many years, how do you come back from that? And this is a very dangerous. No, it's not a madkhali thing. So I'm going to correct that right before we end this. No, it's not a madkhali thing. There's no such thing as a madkhali thing. There may be a blind following ta'asib thing for some people, but our scholars that are like whoever it is, Muhammad bin Hadi al-Madkhali, who I hold as one of my scholars. Sheikh Rabi bin Hadi al-Madkhali, I hold to be one of my scholars. I visited him. I have his books. I benefit. Doesn't mean I agree with everything of anyone. But I do not believe in disrespecting the ulama sunnah, and we defend the ulama sunnah. So be careful of getting caught up in a Madkhali thing or this, because that is the claim of the Hizbis. The Hizbis raise a flag where they attack those mashayikh. And they raise a flag of attacking anyone who has positions in certain masail, diniya, sunniya, and they attack them based on their hizbiyah. So be careful, my brother and my brothers and sisters, to get caught up in those kind of statements, but rather, if you don't have the knowledge, and I don't know what your level of knowledge is, be careful about speaking about the ulama, because the ulama, warath al-anbiya, the scholars, are the inheritors of the prophets. So if you're wrong and making claims like that about a group of scholars, then this is a very dangerous thing. You're attacking the warath al-anbiya. They inherited from your Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They're the inheritors of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So how is it you can speak about them? So we have to be careful when it comes to speaking about the ulama sunnah, khasatan, and ulama amuman. So we have to be very careful. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us and protect us and preserve us and forgive us. May Allah bless us with ikhlas, with thabat, and until the next sitting, wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. So let's see if there's any questions, or is it mainly just a bunch of comments? How do scholars and serious students of knowledge make money and earn a living to support themselves? That depends upon the scholar and the student of knowledge, really. Some people are supported. Some people are business people, so they're favored. So that's basically it, because when you want to traverse that path, the best way to do it is that you have money, or that you're supported. You have a community behind you. You have something. And this is something we've talked about before. All those students of knowledge that come back, graduates of the universities, stayed in places like Damaj or wherever they studied, and then if they don't have any support, You know, I know some students that are graduates of Kulliyat Hadith and stuff who didn't come back and become imams, you know, because that's one of the options they have and stuff like this. And some of them, we lost sight of them. They don't have any participation in dawah or anything else because there's no support. When you have to struggle to take care of your family and you have to survive, you can lose total track and total sight of dawah. So it's very important to support the students of knowledge and to support the scholars. And the scholars in many Muslim lands, they're supported by their governments. Governments have, or their university professors and so on and so forth. They have status and they have nice salaries in the university system and stuff. So they're supported. So then they don't have a need. Or in places like Yemen, they're not like that, but they're still supported by wealthy business people. Wealthy business people put their money where their mouth is. How do you think Damaj who's supported in those with wealthy Yemenis that had big money, or wealthy Saudis that also had big money and said, and even probably the government of Saudi probably helping too, because realizing that these are dawah, these are marakis of Sunnah, these are places, the stronghold of Sunnah, where thousands and thousands and thousands of students will go around the earth spreading the book and the Sunnah. So they're worth investing in, they're worth putting your money in, and that's why it's very important to support those causes. What else is better? What is better? What's better? So yeah, the students they need, so it just depends on the person. What do you think about working 9 to 5? A lot of people end up, and this sometimes hold back. Of course, it's an obstacle. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. You're going to have to make extra sacrifices. And that's for all of us. You know, right now I can teach and I can be kind of active right now. And that's what I'm trying to put my energy into at the Institute, and also producing just material that we're doing. But pretty soon I'm going to have to go probably get a 9 to 5. That's going to change, because the reality is you got to survive. You got family. You got to make ends meet. So you may not have the luxury. It's a luxury. It's a luxury in a sense to be able to be really active in dawah. Some people have dawah organizations that support them. Some people are imams. Some people have community, big organizations that support them in their activity. That's a ni'mah min ni'amillah, and that allows you to devote your time. Think about an imam. How much time he can write books, he can translate, he can do many things and lead the salats and give lessons. That's his life. So that's a ni'mah. But if you're not, and you do that in your spare time, well, you may not have much spare time, aslan. So that's what we have to realize, that if you don't support your students, and if you don't support those graduates and others, and have places for them to fit in and start building organizations or whatever, it's going to be the same story. And you may lose some very valuable people that have things to offer, and it's all by the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but, you know, you may lose some those people who are willing to put the effort in and have something beneficial to give. And that's why brothers are realizing they're trying to come together, some of them, and build organizations and have cooperation and do khair, because without it, it took money to build my mektaba. This took money. It took thousands of dollars just to bring it here. My bookshelves alone, that cost money. Okay? All of that is, nothing is free. Nothing is free. And if you're supporting only yourself and you're supported by yourself, then that makes it more difficult. That's why I encourage you, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala favors you to be a business person, get the money. Get the money and use it in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's nothing harmful. There's only khair with that if you get it and you use it for barakah and blessed endeavors. With the current environment, what do you recommend we do to stand up for justice now without going against Islam? This is a very big mas'ala. It's very big. And it is something that even today I was saddened, when I see the reality, because I've lived in Saudi for so long. I've been away from a lot of the injustices, and seeing this up front, because you don't want your children to grow up in that. You don't want your daughters to be the cause of people tearing their hijab off, beating them, or anything kind of crazy because of their skin color and because of their Muslim. That's a double whammy. Okay? So it's a very difficult and disheartening situation. The reason I say, because it's not just these events, but it's also the boldness of white supremacy, okay? And that could be any supremacy, but this is what we deal with in the West predominantly. That's who is running things, okay? And that has been the narrative. But what amazes me is mainstream conservative channels like Fox News and others that are propping up. They like discredit that there is a struggle. They're like so extreme in their skewing of the facts, as if it's just all about African Americans feeling sorry for themselves. That I saw something, I listened to a little clip, and it just killed me today. It just shook me up, because it makes me think, what do I do? How do we function in a society like that? And how does it relate to the da'wah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How does it relate to the da'wah of Tawheed? Because you cannot totally separate and cut off everything. You can't cut off the fact that you're here. I'm in America. You can't cut that off. I'm an African American Salafi in America. I can't separate that. That's who I am. And there's realities of how the society's going to deal with me and my family and my companions and whatever that we have to deal with. And they're not going to change if I just give them the shurut la ilaha illallah. So it's a very complex issue, and I think as minority Muslims in the West, and that could be in the UK, it could be anything. I'm talking about minority being you're a Muslim minority, you know, because these are disbelieving countries, that we are coming more and more having to realize where our place is. Because most of the people are not going to make hijrah. That's just the reality. And they don't really necessarily, the world is not open for you to make hijrah. Not for everyone. Not for large numbers. Yeah, individuals, you can be determined, get the ajr from Allah, go. You may be allowed to stay there, you may not. You know, there's a lot of places closing their borders. That's a whole nother topic. But the point is, ahabati fillah, is we are here. So what is our role? How do we engage with our rights as human rights, as civil rights? Those are real things we have to deal with. Even if you just want to go to the masjid and pray and read the Quran, if that's all you want to do, you don't want to engage. No one is talking about protesting and getting involved. But the reality is, when your rights are being taken away, when they start taking away Muslim businesses, when they say, no, the masjid can't get a permit. So you've got to engage with that society. So finding our role, finding a comfortable role, especially for Ahl Sunnah, because a lot of the groups, the Ikhwan Muslimin, it's no problem. The Sufis, it's no problem. A lot of the groups, it's no problem. They can just, you know, for them, that's not even a big identity problem. But when you are on the da'wah to Ahl Sunnah bi'idhnillah, then you trying to figure out how you fit in and how you can navigate in those societies is full of complexity. And it's full of tensions. But no doubt, as far as standing up for justice, having a voice, educating yourself, those are the things that I can offer right now. But I don't know, but there's those who have much more knowledge, and they can probably offer you better direction. But I'm just trying to find my own role, where I fit in. And I think one of the best things that I can do is making things aware, but also at the same time, keep on teaching, keep on going forward, because we want people to educate. You know, we want to educate people about the most important issues, which is learning their religion, how to practice it, and focus on that as our core. Now, so be leaders, not followers, dropping in the lizard hole. Yeah. The true scholars don't speak ill of others. would be much better if you speak about Yahud than speaking about so-called Hizbis. Why? Tell me why. These people speaking like this can't be a true scholar. So yeah, I don't see any other questions. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with ilm nafi, rizqan tayyib, wa amalan mutaqabbilan. Muslims' relationship with the dunya. We've talked about this, and I think there's a lot of lectures about this. To attain the hereafter, then should Muslims forget about advancing in the worldly life? No, you shouldn't be extreme in either case. And that's why that's why there's the dua, why Allah Ta'ala mentions in the Quran, Rabbana atina fi dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhaban nar. So we want good in this life as well as the hereafter. You want your portion of the dunya because your portion of the dunya can help you in the hereafter and can help you for the hereafter, can help you on the path of the hereafter, can help others on the path of the hereafter. Bi-idhnillah ta'ala. Is it better to have more good deeds or less knowledge? It's better to practice the knowledge that you have. It's better to practice the knowledge that you have. Currently studying higher education. Parents want me to go to university and get a degree. Might get caught up too much in the dunya. Yeah. Well, try to advance your knowledge if you do decide that, because you need that knowledge too. You're going to need a job. You're going to find your place in your society. So you're going to need that wealth as well. And you're going to need that knowledge as well to operate in whatever society you're in. So there is the need for there's the need for this for both knowledge. And we've talked about it many times, and many questions have come up. Should I seek knowledge? Should I go to the university? All of us, a lot of us have faced that question as well. There's no doubt you don't lose if you go do talib al-ilm. If your intent is sincere and you're trying to elevate yourself or elevate your community, hadha ni'ma min ni'amillah. And they don't have to contradict each other. That's the point. They don't have to contradict each other. Why speak about the Hizbis? Why speak about the Mukhalafat of Ahl Bid'ah? Because internally, those things are much more dangerous than the Yahud. The Yahud and their policies are clear. They're open as a state. As far as the Yahud, what's going on in Palestine and things like this. And those are, unfortunately, they become more so just political issues and political slogans of a particular people. People want to get angry about talking about African American issues, but yet they're ready to speak about Palestinian issues. And Palestinian issues means secular Palestinians. It means Christian Palestinians. It means that. But that's where people want. You can speak about the Uyghurs. You can speak about this. But if you speak about an African American cause, it becomes dangerous for the people, and especially African American Muslims. So this type of hypocrisy has to begin to stop, is one thing. Number two, but as far as the Hizbis internally, the dangers, because they're under the guise of Islam. And we have a plethora of works from the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala ajma'in, the Tabi'in with Tabi'in, talking about the inner threats of Islam. And that being some of the most serious thing that to the spread of the deen and to spread of it correctly. And that means Ahl Bid'ah, that means Hizbis, that means the various sects, whether it's the Mu'tazila, the Jahmiyyah, the various Sufi groups, the Ashari, the Naqshbandis, the whoever, on and on, up to the modern day Jama'at like Jama'at Tabligh and Jama'at Takfir wa Hijra, and on and on and on and on and on. Those people, no doubt, they distort the image of Islam from within and present a absolute dangerous threat. As you see, people will not unite. Even when they attempt to, you see how fragile it is. And because we have so many nusus telling us of how we need to focus of dealing with those inner threats. And likewise, of course, the nusus of the Quran about the Yahud and those things that will come to pass. So dealing with our internal issues and purifying the deen, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the strongest tool that you have to deal with anything. It's the strongest tool by purifying and teaching the pristine form of Islam, the real Islam, and the principles of Islam is far more important than dealing with external enemies and external rivalries. But rather, dealing and purifying, this is how the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, that they began with strengthening the Iman. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam built them and built that community based on Iman. But if you have so many Muslims that can't even agree on Tawheed, they cannot even agree on Tawheed. How many of those groups they call to different aspects of Tawheed, and they don't call to all of Tawheed or a proper understanding of Tawheed? So what kind of unity, and who are you going to face like that and have the victory of Allah? Because it's all about Deen al-Islam. It's all about Tawheed. That's our foundation of the whole Deen. If that's wrecked, that can be the difference between your Jannah and your Jahannam. So it's very important that distortions and aberrations in the religion are dealt with constantly. And it's important that when there's the ability to deal with the other external threats, that you deal with it. So this is why you see such an emphasis on the internal sects, especially from Ahl Sunnah, that you see this, these distinctions, and you see this emphasis placed on that. And this is why Imam Ahmed, who is one of our Salaf, and one of the 4 Imams that's accepted by most of the Ummah, he said that, refuting Ahl Bid'ah is a type of jihad. He said it's a type of jihad. Why? Because of the threat that they present in distorting the religion of Islam. And I know that may not sound comfortable, it may not feel good, it may not feel lovely, but it's the reality, and that's the minhaj of the Salaf. That's where a lot of it begins. Those other things, so those things that require scholarship and talab al-ilm and so forth. The other things require scholarship and talab al-ilm, but it requires Muslim leadership. It requires Muslim unity, that you're going to deal with those other communities and deal with people who are persecuting Muslims. You can only do that really with an army, with the backing, with a leader, with all those kind of things. Those things which we don't have as a united Muslim community. So of course, dealing with what you can deal with, which is internally trying to purify, trying to work towards that by purifying the deen, by reviving the deen, back to the call of Tawheed, back to the call of the Sunnah, back to the call of the proper understanding of the sources and how to practice all of those higher duties. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows best. I've heard that Ibn Jawzi was an Ashari, and this is true. You will find many scholars from the classical scholars, even some of Ahl Hadith, some of them that had either Ashari tendencies or that they had, they had fallen into some of the issues in distorting the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why we follow the madhab of the Salaf. Meaning, what were the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, wa tabi'in, wa taba'a tabi'in, what they were upon. And those ulama that were known for exalting and pushing forward the Sunnah, and they were not blind followers to a madhab in Aqidah, aside from the madhab of Ahl Hadith, wa Sunnah, wa Ahl Athar, wa Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, wa Salaf Salih, that if they were fanatical about any of those things, then we refer to them as Ashari. Okay? But those Imams, like Imam An-Nawawi, like Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, who we can't do without these great Imams of the Sunnah, who had mistakes in Aqidah. They had some mistakes in Aqidah. But you don't find any of the Imams of the Sunnah calling them Mubtadi'ah. calling them innovators, but rather they point out their mistakes. Imam Nawawi went astray in this mistake and this mistake and this mistake in Aqidah. Imam Ibn Hazm had some ta'wil and sifat and such and such. You don't follow anyone in their mistakes. So we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives those great imams because of their service to the sunnah. Their service to the sunnah. And likewise, we don't make tabdi of them as who preceded us before that. The imams of the sunnah didn't, but they pointed out their mistakes. Imam Ibn Hazm made this mistake. Imam Nawawi, Imam whoever, doesn't matter. No one makes mistakes from, no one is free from mistakes. So that's something very important to, for us to have an understanding of. Imam's Arba'in Nawawi, that is an immense book. I think I've taught from it how many times, so that's my view. That's one of the books we studied is taught in Al-Athari Institute, is Arba'in Nawawi. I finished it already. It's recorded, it's edited, but it's not, it won't be released until the institute is up. But that's finished. That's an essential book. It's essential. What do you say about Abu Iyad? Do we have to listen to him? How can you say you have to listen to anybody? You don't have to listen to me. So how is it I can force you and say, do you have to listen? There's nobody you have to listen to. But if I were to say someone you should listen to, it would probably be Imam Salih bin Uthaymeen and his books, or Imam bin Baz, or Imam Muqbil, or Imam Abdul Muhsin al-Abbad. That's why I would say you should not avoid those imams. But as far as somebody from the West, as far as, and anyone that you have to, I can't say that about anyone. You have to. No, I don't say you have to listen to Abu Iyad. I've never have, so I don't know why you would have to. If you don't know Yahud runs the banks and the media, you should research it instead of something me here. I don't know who you're talking to, if you're talking to me or talking to somebody else, but regardless, okay, so tell me what, getting into, I don't know, all that kind of theory and all of spending all your time on those things. Tell me how that's going to advance the religion of Islam. How is that going to advance the Aqeedah of Ahl Sunnah? How is that going to purify the Muslims and help them to be strong and united on the correct creed? And how is that going to be in relation to following the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ? By knowing whether the Yahud control Hollywood, and they control the banks, and they control this, and they control that, and they control this government and that government, and this and that and other. How is that really going to advance? What are you doing about it? What do you expect to do about it? So really, the most powerful way, that's why I believe wholeheartedly in the Salafi minhaj. The madhab of Ahl Sunnah is so, if we go to these classical books, here's what Imam Malik said. He said, which means, this is the وقيل لا يصلى أول هذه لا يصلى آخر هذه أمة إلا بما صلها أولها. He said that what rectified the beginning of this ummah is the same thing that will rectify the later generations. Meaning, if we want rectification, even with the complexities and insanity of this world and all the complexities of the problems and new issues that we face and stuff, our rectification really comes with staying strong on that madhab, in aqeedah, in methodology, in manners, in everything, as was the case of the Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, وَاتْبَاعَ تَابِعِينَ وَاتْبَاعِهِمْ, and then those who follow them بِإِحْسَانٍ إِلَى يَوْمِ الدِّينِ. That's the narrative. That's what the narrative we're holding on to. And that's our paradigm as Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, is that our rectification for all the complexities, for all the craziness, that we can go back and we can look to the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah, we can look to the book and the Sunnah and the madhab of the Salaf to give us those guiding parameters And that which was our leeway is that which is within those parameters on how to deal with these issues. We know all the conspiracies and all the madness and all the evil that's out in this world. But really staying strong on that same slow pace, slow foot after foot. Tawheed. Tawheed was Sunnah. Tawheed was Sunnah. Tawheed. It's like a going on a slow train. But your path is going straight. All the other callers, for example, let me give you an example. Okay, you're talking about the Yahud and the banks and all this. This is a big part of the dawah of who? Out of South Africa. What's his name? He has Indian or Pakistani origin in South Africa. Imran Khan, I think. This is a big part of his dawah, is the American dollar and making, taking the nusus from the Quran and the Sunnah and his understanding, his application of how this is playing out in the New World Order. That's a huge part of his dawah and his popularity. Okay? A lot of that is his inferences and speculations. The dollar is the Dajjal. Trump is the Dajjal. Obama was the Dajjal. This one's the Dajjal. Okay, we don't know who the Dajjal is going to be next week, according to his predictions and so forth. The point is that that whole methodology is based on speculation. Even with all the evils we see, it's still a bunch of speculations. The dawah of Ahl Sunnah is a dawah of certainty, a dawah of yaqeen, and that it's a slow path and it's going straight. And that's why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that they said in a hadith, said, "Khattan lana Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam khattan." The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam drew a line. Wa khatta ala yaminihi wa ala yasar. And then and when he drew the one in the middle, he said, "Hada sabil Allah." He said, "This is the path of Allah." And then he drew one on the right and the left, and he said, "Hadihi subul ala kulli sabil fiha shaytan kama qala." He said, those are the various paths, meaning the one on the right and one on the left. And at the end of every one of those paths is a shaitan who calls to it. So our sabil is the path of the awwaleen, as-sabiqun min al-muhajirin wal-ansar. That's the path of Ahl Sunnah. And even with all the madness and all the craziness, it's the path that we have to continually traverse. Because you'll see a lot of the fitna, the excitements and all this stuff, it will pass, as it always does. Like now, it was disturbing for me. But maybe in a couple weeks, all the protests will die down, the media cover will die down, people will go back to their lives probably and forget. For those people who are aroused and invigorated for a minute, they'll die off, they'll go back to their regular lives. All the so-called unity, it will ban away, and the supremacy will still be there, the oppression will still be there until the next big event that triggers again. Maybe some people will be invigorated enough to start something positive and to invigorate change, to push change in a good way, and pushing it most importantly based on the book and the Sunnah. Some people might be, but most of the people, they'll forget all the things that happen, and it'll still be the situation that it is. So it's a steady path, and that's why I invite myself and my brothers and sisters to the path of Ahl Sunnah, going back to the book and the Sunnah and the madhab of the Salaf, really learning and going that forward. May Allah bless us with the class with the bat. Imran Hussein, that's what I meant. I meant Imran Khan. No, Imran Hussein was the one I was talking about. Imran Hussein. Yes. Yeah. There's only one supremacy or privilege, and it's the Yahudi privilege. That's interesting, but it's not true. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.